Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. I really welcome Marcin from IBM, my guest, myself, Artur Bula. I have a pleasure to run Bimodal Solutions. We are passionate maniacs of planning and planning platforms and planning processes in supply chain. So today we will talk and present the ability of the newest, the most digital solutions ever, which allow to turn your planning processes and really push them more into the digital side of the planet rather than staying in the analog Excel spreadsheets. Maybe let's start with a little bit of the introductions. Marcin, if you can introduce yourself. And by the way, is it okay? I call you Martin, which will be more English.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Arthur, thank you for introducing me and inviting me to the call. My name is Martin Bielecki. I'm the software sales leader for commercial customers in Poland and Baltic countries, and I am also responsible for cooperation with selected business partners. My key focus area is analytics. I think we will refer to this later.
Yes, we are going to, you can actually count how many times we are going to say the word planning and analytics.
Yeah.
Will be extremely important for us that we present it in the right way, because what we will be doing is to introduce a planning and analytics platform. Really try to show how the customers use this kind of tools, right? That first of all, deliver the message that the platforms like this are available on the market. Definitely planners have been pushed a little bit into the corner of it's either your ERP system or Excel, and the news is that it's not the only way that you can take. So for the past few years, we've been really introducing the platform, implementing the platform, and today we'll talk about how to use such a platform specifically with IFS applications. It's also in our background. We've been implementing IFS applications for more than 20 years. We know what works. Is this already a great ERP system? And we know what doesn't work. So from that perspective, we'll definitely show a highlight. I will use the presentation during the whole meeting. Of course, not to interrupt our discussion, switch back and forth. So it doesn't really look like we're doing much of marketing. I want to talk, right, about the planning. So we will use the word integrated business planning also a lot. There is probably a lot of confusion, maybe different interpretations of what the integrated planning is. We will look at this from the perspective of the systems. Okay, so it's less from the perspective of the processes itself. We'll talk about integration of the pieces of the planning process, integrating of the small components of it. Of course, the interpretation, as everything with the bimodal IT, bimodal planning, bimodal solutions, is that really, dear customer, you can make your own interpretations. If you believe that connecting sales planning and finance planning would be building an integrated business planning, so be it. Of course, the definitions are important, but maybe sometimes not as important. So really, from the perspective of the planning, what is our main objective, right? The main concept here is to give businesses a solution that is going to allow them to bring the planning into the digital world. So, of course, what we want to do is to give the support for the process that allows you to really combine the communication with the customer, really helping you to understand the customer better. Of course, understand it from the online interaction or maybe from the historical data. We want to take and really let your planners do their job, which is really make decisions, really not spend hundreds of hours a week kind of digging out the data and combining the data and really massaging the data, and call it however we want to call it. And then, of course, let you talk to your entire supply chain. The key here is not to only say, okay, dear customer, I know what you need. Now I fully understood your needs. Now it's a case for supplying to those needs, right? So we will be talking about the planning processes that integrate the pieces of the demand and supply planning. And of course, we do it in really from the perspective of the both operations and finance. That's one thing that we want to highlight multiple times, that those two words are really being, at the moment, a little bit separated. And of course, implementing the integrated piece of the planning really combines both finance and the operations. So really, most of the businesses that we approach or we are being called by or we implement the solution for really complain a lot about the disconnected silos. Of course, this applies to operational processes, but specifically to the planning as well. Of course, it is partially due to the lack of the communication, lack of the human skills, and lack of the proper process, etc. But many times it is due to the lack of the tools and solutions, right? If it takes hours to prepare my small part of the plan, and then it would take another n number of hours to really talk to other departments and aggregate everything and synchronize everything, it's definitely a challenge of time, and simply the teams say we refuse to do it. Of course.
Artur, may I ask you one question? Sorry.
Sure.
You mentioned that there is a challenge with time-consuming manual processes, and so as I understand, you are trying to tell about simplifying this, but how can you imagine it will happen? Because implementing such a platform means another hundreds of hours of utilization of people who are already overloaded. So short 3 years and the world will be different, or how it will look like?
Well, it doesn't take the whole 3 years. It is of course implementation process, right? Of course there is a need to define the processes, to define the requirements, to construct the solution. But the key here is that we are talking about ready to be utilized platform, right? It was developed. This is a software that is utilized to build the solutions in almost a low-code mode. So more of the configuration, less of the programming, a lot of prototyping. So the idea here is that, of course, we don't go and attack the whole left to right scope of the planning. We start with this, low-hanging fruit, kind of most of the painful processes are right in this corner, and then pretty much the solution grows, right? So we can start from demand planning if it's the most important. Then add production, etc., etc. And of course, the key here is to really combine the best practice that customer has, not the best practice that end customers around and maybe the competition has, and really automate as much as we can, right? From that perspective, we relieve the planners from this daily job or month, and every month depends on the planning cycle. We relieve the planners from having to dig the data and pretty much repeat the same. Every day, 3 hours I spend pretty much copying and shuffling the data around. So, and of course, what is happening, and I'll talk about this in a moment, is to really combine and connect certain organizations, right? And say, okay, well, this is a sales part and this is a production part, and they don't match sometimes. And what's the reason? And if they do, then it's fine. But if they don't, what do we do, right? Sales department is selling something that we don't actually produce. So interesting scenarios. Of course, we open up the communication as well. So here it comes about, breaking the silos, right? The sales guys will talk to the production guys and say, well, we must sell it this way because customers buy it this way. But when you produce, do something different. So of course, and we go on the really level of the data and processes. So we try to really build a connection between one plant to another, right? And of course, the lack of data accuracy and really the lack of the confidence, we've seen this many times, right? And the problem is that, can I trust this data, right? And of course, what we are doing here is that not only that we will secure the data, because it really goes into, I will call it a database, right? Because it's a common understanding. It is some kind of a database behind it, but it is a venture or adventure towards this one source of truth, right? Instead of having multiple Excels and different interpretations, different ways of calculating specific KPIs, we implement one way of doing it. And of course, what we have done here is really that we have taken a well-established, really well-known IBM Planning Analytics platform, which of course has its own history, and we can tell the stories about this and really share the information about the platform itself. And we implemented planning models really directed towards supply chain. So our knowledge and the knowledge of our customers that we are putting into the platform to pre-build certain solutions, right, and start with the certain patterns, allowed us to say, yes, we can build a planning model to support supply chain. And this is, we call that bimodal planning platform, right? So there is this foundation, the technology of IBM and the planning analytics, very important, planning and analytics. Not only a BI platform, but it's a planning, full-blown planning platform. We'll talk a little bit about the difference here, what the planning portion allows you to do. And of course, our knowledge about IFS applications, we can pretty much walk into the system. We know what's there, right? We perfectly integrated that solution, so it's a kind of a flawless data collection, planning, and then sending data back to IFS to really execute certain processes. And when asked what is really the objective here, I always say, hey, we've implemented something that is like a connected vessels, right? You press in one place, you move a liquid in another place. And of course, we call it the business rules, right? The business rule is that if somebody increases the price, maybe we'll see less production or maybe more production. It depends on how customers behave and what business rules the certain given company has. So really from the perspective, we need to think about this as again, connecting teams, connecting people, giving them a platform where they can together sit down and make certain decisions, right? It's less about throwing something over the fence. We are saying that, okay, here it's one connected system, everyone knows how it works. And of course, again, the adventure can start from two of those dots connected, right? It doesn't have to be that my integrated business planning means that I have to have all the modules and all the processes and new product introduction and marketing and R&D, all of this. Let's first start with sales and finance. That usually is the first move. And then, of course, connect inventory, logistics, and then purchase plans, right? The whole procurement. And then really start talking based on the same platform, same numbers, draw the conclusions, right? Save those conclusions in the platform itself, have a meeting where we open up the screen that is really part of the platform, not really a set of Excels that we still need to work and synchronize. So from the perspective of any business, right, and a supply chain, production, manufacturing business, what that means is that we create kind of a network of the different plans, right? And those should be everyone who is in the supply chain should be familiar with those statements that we are making here, where we pump the data into the model like this, and of course allow the users to work with this model, right? Of course, there will be a lot of automated calculations, right? But let's take demand planning, right? There is always decisions, right? Nobody's going to just say, hey, use statistics. There is this wonderful statistical learning method. We are going to trust in it, and then we'll run and create our demand plan. That doesn't work this way, right? Usually sales planning will sit down with production planning and we'll say, hey, here we'll increase, here we are going to drop a little bit sales, and we call it an expert, right? So somebody who is a planner and he has a gut feeling, right? And of course, our role here is to give a solution to the planners that will support them in making those decisions. Bring that data, pre-calculate, prepare it, and then say, hey, the consensus is as this. And then what's the consensus? Well, we cannot sell more than we can make, right? So it's a decision, right? Or maybe we need to lower our plan because the purchase planning or our purchase department says we cannot buy that much. There is this disruption at the moment happening in the market, right? We have a semiconductor problem, cardboard problem. We have I know steel issues with delivering steels. There are no containers, right, to move stuff around. So it is interesting to predict sales, right? And say, hey, we will be selling, but we cannot make. We have to stop production for a bit of a time because there are no components. And we all have to see it. And then when there are no components, we need to tell our customers that there is something happening. And the planning platform is supposed to help us to answer those questions and be proactive, right? To really have an ability to, I don't know, try scenarios, right? Last month we were missing some materials. This month maybe we'll miss the same deliveries, right? So what this is going to give us when it comes to the demand planning, and it's really not prescribed that every customer must implement every dot here, though it may also be that customers may come up with their own ideas, with their own pieces of the solution that are critical, very important. I don't know, when maybe there is a business that is very labor intensive, and you always have to reach out to temporary workers. Maybe resource planning will be a critical piece here.
Artur, may I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
Yeah, so it seems that after implementing such a platform you are describing, it seems that it will be, or it should be, the main tool for planners and for end customers from various parts of the organization, like from finance, from planning, from, I don't know, controlling or supply chain. And the platform, so from one perspective, it will be used by, simply speaking, the whole organization. And from the other perspective, it will cover the whole, how to say, data chain. Yeah. So starting from the data gathering from various sources, merging, cleaning the data, providing to the platform, then preparing some historical analysis, plus some predictions, plus some scenarios you mentioned here on the slide. So it seems that, as I'm listening to you, it seems that at the end it will be the main tool for daily work for the end customers.
Correct. As far as of the planning, and of course, not only the planners themselves, of course, the planners, they make a lot of decisions, right? They need to trigger the implementation or the realization of those decisions, but then of course they need to go and talk to the board, right? Talk to the CEOs and explain, what was happening, right? Do the reporting, and when many times when you have those planning cycles, when everyone in the organization is involved. So, of course, some of the users we call them consumers, right?
Yeah.
The data, of the information. They would just look at the charts, look at the wonderful, animated graphics that show you, this is our plan, this is the potential, those are the risks, etc., etc. From this perspective, it may really look from the first glance as this is a BI solution, right? Because you walk into a lot of the president's offices and you see this huge TV and there are charts, right? And there are, then they move around, and of course what you see in those charts many times is that how your company is performing right now, but there is no magic button, that screen, that you can say stop because I see the disruption, right? Or stop because I see something dangerous happening. Usually there is a phone and we trigger some actions. Here we move the data. Our concept is really not only to look at the history but extend it to the future, right? And make it more of the planning. So from perspective of the display, it's going to look like a BI, but from the perspective of how we work with the platform, that we enter the data, we run certain scenarios, we sometimes manually change certain parameters, right? What would happen if we lowered that specific OEE parameter by 2%, or we increase it by 2%? Look, we can slow down the production line and then run on the less workforce on that production line.
So yeah, so sorry for interrupting once again, but what you described now is we can say the difference between analytics and planning analytics. Yeah.
Exactly. And
yeah, so analytics is well, I think analytics, even if the analytics is related with prediction, it doesn't allow the end users the, I would say, the interaction with the data. Yeah, planning analytics is really I would say the analytics are driven by end users. Yeah, but what if analysis, some scenarios, etc.
I would challenge, whoever is watching this video right now, just put the notes and say, yeah, I have seen a completely autonomous planning processes with supply chain, right? There are not such a thing yet, right? There is no system that would run the planning for a multi-billion-dollar corporation and don't have people involved in it, right? And when there are people involved, what they want to do is to be able to enter some data, right? Enter something, comment, right? At least so they know what happened. And that gives you this component of planning. And of course, what you can definitely imagine is that once you combine both, right, you have this power of seeing what is happening and then making a decision and some kind of a freezing that decision, right, in the specific version of the plan and say, hey, I made it. Let's see how we perform compared to the reality a month later, and then say, yes, we are learning, right? So from that perspective, definitely the difference, right? And of course, when it comes to the planning processes and planning horizons, we want to make them transparent. So we don't want, a lot of companies run by this 1 year business plan. It's called budgeting. Right? Everyone in the organizations of the supply chain and operations, when they know that there is a September, October, of course, depends on the business calendar for the company, but usually it's September, October. Everyone is like, oh, now we have to create a budget again. And of course, the budget is such a nice book. You create it and you put it on the shelf, and then from time to time, controlling will check. We are still on budget, but little actions are taken, to be honest with you. I think that moving from budgeting to S&OP, right, sales and operations planning, running the monthly cycles, adjusting the plan, right, the year is never going to look the way how you looked at it a year before, right, especially right now. I know the customers that are running S&OP emergency meetings at least once a week, right, because there are such a big changes, the border has been closed, right, our main supply chain is just been disrupted. So, of course, what we want to do is that to say that in the platform like this, you can implement all those various levels of planning, right? And you can make them visible to each other. Of course, sometimes you need to translate, because here we talk about quantities and part numbers and SKUs and groups, and here we talk about the counts, right? So we need to understand, somebody does the elimination of something in inventory, right? And those accountants, they are excited about the fact that there is a good report coming out of it, but for operations, what just happened? Those parts are still there, right? Physically, they are in inventory. So, of course, from the perspective of multiple organizations crossing and from the perspective of the granularity of the data, right? S&OP mostly working on groups, right, or certain assumptions, certain risks, and then move down to the 12, 16 weeks of the more operational plan, master production schedule, and then turning it into even the production plans for the next few days. So that's the concept. That platform can really take most of the planning processes and really show it one to another. So it's kind of not planning in the vacuum. We are aligned, right? One example, sales and operations planning is one of the processes, right? Here the idea is that especially in the environment when you have multiple ERP systems, this is kind of a very extremely laborious process really to get everything in line, right? And here what we are talking about is to, kind of a critical planning where we have multiple organizations and we want to take the approach of still sales and operations where we have quantities, some aggregations, maybe some disaggregations, we have some high runners. In the same time, we want to see the financial perspective of it, right? And this is the platform that was built to really handle those processes. So really aligning not only collection of the data, but preparing all the plans, sometimes even running a workflow, right? I can trigger the tasks to all the planners, say, hey, S&OP meeting is coming, please prepare your plans, right? And can see, okay, 2 days left, none of them did nothing, right? So I can tell executive management, well, we will not have the right data for our meeting. And of course, usually we go with the plans to executive, and they really know their stuff, right? And they're looking at the hundreds of numbers, say, at this point, something is not right, change it. And then you do it directly in the, instead of PowerPoint, you do it directly in the platform, you save it, and you have your plan. So one of the examples, and of course, advise anyone to contact us, will show how it works in practice and how you can do and run those exercises. So really trying to put a few marks on the map of planning, right? What are the key features? I think that the list that I have is about 25 key features, but wanted to pick on a few of them. And really, maybe you're from IBM, so maybe you will tell everyone, what do you think is the key function that you would highlight when you're just, I don't know, you're standing next to you know who on the business intelligence, let's say competitive world, and now you're saying, hey, I have planning and analytics. So what are the key features that you would like to highlight?
Yeah, so first of all, my list is longer. I have 75 key features. But as you mentioned at the beginning of the meeting today, IBM Planning Analytics is a well-known platform. So so nice to hear. But really, I think there are 3-4 key features which really differentiate our platform. So first of all, what is mentioned here, that what if analysis and sandboxes. So it's really so it doesn't sound like something really unique, but it is, yeah, because usually there are a lot of users engaged in one process. There are really big portions of data. There are some versions of the plans, yeah, and so then usually when you want to do the what if analysis, you prepare a copy of the spreadsheet usually, and then you work on a really big data, and when you want to implement the changes into the production plan, it seems complicated. In our platform, you just take a mouse, select some portion of data, then it's blocked only for you. You, let's say, play with the data, press accept, deal done. So, well, I think it would be better if you can see this, but hopefully you will. So it's really a big change. Then another unique feature, so which is, I think, important, especially in big enterprises, is the ability of auditing the data, auditing of all changes. So even if you have the final plan on the really high level presented to the management board, so only with some key KPIs, so then you can drill down, and at every stage of the calculation of merging the data, you can see who did the change, what was the source of the data, yeah, and what was before, what was after, and you can come back really to the source data, so to the momentum when the data was imported from the source system. So I think the user interface also it's really nice, but I will not focus on it. I will mention the third key feature, which is important from my perspective, which is more related to the technology. So it's important that all the data you can see in the Excel, because Excel can be still a working area for you, an interface, yeah, but it's only an interface. All the data are stored and processed on the server, which means that they are stored in a really safe area, and they are processed much faster than on your PC, yeah. And one step further, so the data are processed. Okay, I will not go further into the technical issues, yeah, but so it works really faster. The data are safe, especially now when majority of us still work from home, yeah. So we are not in our premises, which are, you know, secured much better than our network at home. And of course, you know, I don't know how you, but I have kids who from time to time access my PC as well. Yeah. So so to summarize, what if analysis, full audit of the data and the changes, plus the secure and really fast environment.
Yeah, I think that it would make sense that maybe one of the next sessions that we run is really to show some of those functionalities, because sometimes it's hard to imagine, right? And I remember a lot of presentations, when I show that user interface, which I think, again, for planners is extremely important. I think that this is a huge differentiator because it looks like planning platform, right? It looks like a planning screen. Actually the time runs left to right, and then you have facts up, down, and then it's really a pivot table, so you can really analyze the data. So we'll definitely invite everyone for more of the presentation of the features itself to really show what are we specifically talking about here, this huge difference between this and ERP system, right? The planning and analytics and ERP, how it presents the data, and also the business intelligence when you have those nice reports and you can look at them and export to Excel, right? And then do some work on them. So, of course, there is a huge technology section behind. Don't want to bore everyone who is not IT, right? What we are saying is that, yes, we are bringing a lot of technology in-house. Of course, from the user perspective, it's all behind something called Planning Analytics Workspace, right? It's a user interface. I go to the web page, I log in from wherever I am. I can do it from my office, from my home, etc. Rarely we use tablets and mobile phones, right? Planning is rather a huge screen, 27-inch left, right. A lot of tables, a lot of graphs on one screen. As you mentioned, there's a database behind it. It's a multi-dimensional database. There are a lot of components that we use to bring in the data, right? That many times even connect the customer data, the supplier data, right? Open up, right? The world is going towards really building a multi-enterprise supply chain networks rather than only my closed little or big company, right? But still a little bit behind the wall called email. So the communication with customers, communication with suppliers, not using EDI, right? The old method of sending the data, the world of the microservices, things like this will be coming, and hopefully next session we will bring this closer to everyone to say what's possible, how you can share plans, how you can collaborate with your suppliers to say that there are actually doable, right? Manage customer capacities, etc. So there is a lot of technology. Please trust us. And then, of course, hopefully one day IT department will ask us all the right questions to say, hey, what's there, what's behind it, and we'll explain and show, install it, and present to the business and IT as well. Right? One amazing thing, right, is a little bit of a story behind Planning Analytics. It reaches out really far from now back to the past. It has been introduced quite some time ago, this amazing concept of something called TM1, right, as a database. But I'm really amazed with how much money IBM is spending at the moment on the R&D, and I'm wondering why.
Well, so the answer is really easy, yeah, because there is really a big demand on such solutions worldwide. So we have really a lot of new customers every month. So especially now during the COVID or the situations with the global supply chain. So the focus on really, how to say, agile approach to planning is higher and higher, or bigger and bigger. And what's also important, that we talk about planning in all market sectors, automotive, retail, finance, everyone has to plan. And even if we go further, or deeper, if you look at any organization, what you presented 2 or 3 slides before, planning is also more than welcome in almost all units or departments of the organization. Yeah, so which means there is a big demand. So I would even say that when we look at our overall analytics portfolio of IBM, which is really rich, IBM Planning Analytics is currently a bestseller, really a bestseller. So that's why you see the number of customers. Majority of them are the customers of ERP, you know that IBM doesn't have ERP in our offering, yeah? Which means that we go to IFS customers, to SAP customers, yeah, and others. So really, as you are presenting, Artur, on the slide, we are investing really a lot, yeah, but I think, well, quite beneficial. Yeah.
Well, yeah, definitely from the partner perspective, it's always a kind of a interesting thoughts that you have, are we doing the solution on the right platform and is it evolving enough? And, 3-4 years ago, I remember how it looked and now how it looks right now and how it works. And it's really a pleasure to stand in front of the customer and present, all advances in the planning analytics workspace. Sometimes it's hard to keep up with all the new releases, but that's kind of a good news. We can always jump over and it's amazing, right? 7,000 customers. I wonder how many there is in the States. And so maybe next time we can show some maps and see how many multinational corporations use it for not only planning, but maybe even a consolidation and some financial budgeting, the financial elements of that solution. So yeah, that's quite good news for everyone, right? So really, from that perspective, what we can talk about is there are hundreds of cases. We will definitely, if you go to IBM pages, you can read about certain solutions that have been implemented. I spotted 2 of them. Really, the customer who uses the planning analytics for specifically this set of the processes that we also advertise that it could be used for, supply chain management and S&OP, and specifically here already adding the MPS, master production schedule, or master schedule component, right? Of course, there is an MRP, there is an ERP system, right? But they just spend too much, or before the implementation, they have spent too much time on gathering all the data, turning the sales plans into something that would look like a master production schedule, and then push it down to the MRP to really execute. And of course, the numbers, usually the ROI, it's always kind of interesting discussion, how do you calculate ROI on certain things? And I remember one of the customers told me that the quarter of their project returned itself after they avoided one mistake, right? In planning, this is the magnitude of the decisions is a completely different. We are not looking here for those 2% on every transaction, right? 2 seconds, etc. We are looking here for a dramatic change many times because we've made something visible, right?
Well, Artur, if I can add something. I think that what is really absolutely unique in analyzing ROIs of after implementing such platforms is that always you can show the money. Always you can show the money the customer either saved or maybe earned more. And this is really unique because when you, for example, compare it to, I don't know, ERP implementation. So show me the ROI after ERP implementation. It's impossible. Or even after BI implementation, or I don't know, CRM implementation, it's almost impossible. Here, you can very easily and very shortly compare, the previous numbers to the current numbers, and you can see even here on the slide, yeah, reduce manual effort, 10 days to 3 days. So 7 days is saved.
Yeah, exactly, and especially in the planning department when you have, those highly skilled people and really the ability that they have right now not to spend time, massaging the data, but really doing the constructive working and really thinking about what decisions to make easier and faster. Another case that I have is a little bit of an example of the kind of a innovation using the platform, because really that's kind of in our hearts to say, dear customers, you have your own unique processes, you have your own unique ideas. I know that there is a lot of theories on the market. What if there is no product to support those ideas, right? For that reason, we have platforms, right? So you can even venture into building something that is completely unique, right? And one of those examples is really the project that we are doing with one of our customers. It's called production leveling. at the moment is the first module, but it's going to trigger more and more kind of a complete supply chain management based on the leveling principles and the lean management principles. And I'm just showing this to say that, okay, you have a good idea, don't lose it. Of course, prototype it, maybe prototype it in Excel. It's going to be simple and cheap, and you can kind of think about this 10 times. But then you want to make this an enterprise-wide solution, pick the platform. So, of course, again, more we can talk about, what is leveling and how it interacts with the IFS applications and how it interacts with other ERPs. Just an idea that, we started with the empty white page, and there is a solution that came to life in few months and is being implemented right now. So again, a lot of interesting cases, 7,000 plus customers. Some of them don't want to talk about this, right? That's kind of interesting. It's hard to get references those days because there are those unique competitive solutions that are implemented and nobody wants to share that info, right? Why would you tell your competition that you're using IBM Planning Analytics? So, of course, the logos on the web page of IBM definitely make the statement, which is really great to be able to work with such a platform. And I think that I want to end at this point really with one of the kind of thinkers of the modern world, looking into the really digitalization of pretty much everything, right? We are still in the really analog world. Again, pen, paper, Excel, this is an analog, despite the fact it's maybe being sent via email. Let's think about platforms and systems. And one of many presentations I would like to continue. So Martin, or Martin, I don't know.
We can both.
If you find more time, I will definitely invite you for the next session when we dive in, show a little bit of the platform, maybe show some examples, and hopefully everyone will enjoy our short morning meetings.
Yeah, Artur, thank you very much. Of course, I will join every meeting with you with pleasure, and I think presenting something live is a good idea.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you. And if you have any questions, please either ask in the notes and send them directly to me. Here's my contact info. And then we'll definitely come back with more of the live presentations of what we have done using IBM Planning Analytics. Thank you.
Thank you.